There's a moment, most people have had it, where you eat something salty and something in your brain just settles, like a tension you didn't know you were holding gets released. Most of us chalk that up to just liking the taste, but that explanation is almost embarrassingly incomplete because what's actually happening in that moment has roots that go back roughly 400 million years, and the fact that we're still feeling it today says something genuinely strange about how the human body operates. So let's start with something that sounds unrelated: the ocean. Ancient ocean water had a specific mineral composition: sodium, chloride, potassium, all suspended in a ratio that early single-celled organisms basically evolved in. These organisms didn't need to regulate sodium, they were swimming in it. The interior of the cell and the exterior of the cell were already balanced. It just worked. Then life moved on to land, and suddenly that equilibrium was gone. There was no more sodium bath. The body had to start managing its own internal ocean, because that's basically what blood plasma is. It's a version of ancient seawater that we carry around with us. And the moment your ancestors crawled out of the water, their bodies had a problem they'd never had before. How do you hold on to something that used to be everywhere? The answer was a hormone. Actually, a cascade of hormones. In the primary one, aldosterone is produced by a small triangular gland that sits right on top of your kidneys. You've probably heard of them, the adrenal glands. People talk about them mostly in the context of stress and adrenaline, which is fair, but that framing undersells them. These glands are also the reason you're alive, in a very literal, moment-to-moment sense. Aldosterone's job is to signal your kidneys, keep the sodium, don't let it leave. And when blood sodium drops even slightly, we're talking a change of a few millimoles per liter, aldosterone spikes. Your kidneys reabsorb sodium from urine and blood volume stabilizes. It happens fast. The system is incredibly sensitive. But here's what most people don't know. That sensitivity isn't just physiological. It bleeds into your brain. There's a region in the brainstem, the nucleus of the solitary tract, that receives direct signals from the adrenal system. And when sodium is low, it doesn't just trigger kidney function. It changes how your brain processes salt as a sensory experience. Salt actually tastes better when you're depleted. Not metaphorically, measurably. The hedonic value of salt, the pleasure your brain assigns to consuming it, goes up, which is why you can be eating something you'd normally describe as too salty, and suddenly it's exactly right. Your brain moved the goalposts and didn't tell you. Studies on rats showed that when you induce sodium depletion, they will seek out and consume concentrations of salt they normally avoid. The preference doesn't drift, it flips, almost binary. And the neural pathway responsible for that flip involves the same dopaminergic circuits that respond to things like sugar, drugs, and social reward. So the craving isn't just hunger, it's closer to a survival drive. The distinction matters because drives operate below the level of conscious decision-making. You don't decide to want salt, the same way you don't decide to want air. And this creates an interesting tension in modern life, because we've never had more salt available. The scarcity that shaped this entire system doesn't really exist anymore. In most of human history, you had to work to get sodium. You got it from animal protein, from certain plants, from trading. It was precious enough that the word salary is derived from the Latin word for salt. Roman soldiers were reportedly paid in it, or paid to buy it. Historians argue about the specifics, but either way, salt was currency. Now it's in everything. In the system your body built for a world of sodium scarcity is running in a world of sodium abundance. The hormonal feedback mechanism hasn't changed. The neural reward signal hasn't changed. Only the environment has changed. But I want to push back slightly on the obvious conclusion here, because I think it's too easy to land on, and that's why we're all slowly dying. That's a real concern, but it misses something. The sodium craving system is not broken,
It's doing exactly what it was built to do. The fact that you feel relief when you eat salt is not a malfunction. It's a highly precise biological response to a condition your body is trained to recognize and resolve. The problem isn't the system, it's the mismatch between the system and the context it's running in. And that mismatch is genuinely hard to navigate, because the signal that tells you to eat salt is the same signal whether you need it or not. Your brain can't always distinguish between a real sodium deficit and a conditioned craving triggered by the smell of chips. The machinery doesn't have that resolution. There's research coming out of groups studying hypothalamic function, suggesting that part of what makes sodium regulation so persistent is that the brain never fully decouples salt-seeking from survival-level priority. It stays in a category of need that the body treats as non-negotiable. You can override it temporarily with willpower, but the signal doesn't go quiet the way hunger does after you've eaten, partially because hunger has a clear off switch. Leptin, ghrelin, stomach distension, and sodium regulation doesn't quite work the same way. The adrenal signal can stay elevated even after you've consumed salt, particularly if you've been in a state of chronic low-level depletion, which brings up something that doesn't get talked about enough in conversations about diet. A lot of people are chronically undersalted, not over, under. This sounds counterintuitive given everything we hear about salt and cardiovascular risk. And to be clear, the research on high sodium intake is real and worth taking seriously. But the narrative around salt has shifted hard enough that some people, particularly people who exercise heavily, sweat heavily, follow low-processed food diets, are actually running low. And the symptoms look a lot like things they'd attribute to other causes: fatigue, mental fog, muscle cramps, dizziness when standing up fast. That last one has a name: orthostatic hypotension, and one common contributing factor is inadequate blood volume, which comes back to sodium, because sodium is what anchors water in the bloodstream. Without enough of it, blood volume drops, and when you stand up, your body can't compensate fast enough, so you get dizzy. The adrenal glands are working overtime in those situations. They're doing their job, but if you're not giving the system what it needs, you're just accumulating the symptoms of ancient scarcity in a modern body that theoretically has access to as much salt as it wants. There's something almost tragic-comic about that. The body built this entire hormonal system to preserve sodium across billions of years of evolution, got the adrenal response right, got the neural pathways wired up, and then we started living in a world where some people flood the system, eating processed food all day, and other people accidentally starve it, eating clean. Neither extreme is what the system was designed for. What it was designed for, if you can even use that word about evolution, was a world where sodium was intermittent, sometimes present, sometimes scarce, with a craving had to be strong enough to motivate behavior when the mineral was available, and where the preservation system had to be tight enough to hold on to it when it wasn't. That rhythm doesn't really exist in modern life, for most of us. Sodium is either constant or it's cut, and the body keeps trying to execute the thing it evolved to do inside a pattern it never anticipated. The adrenal glands keep signaling, the brain keeps assigning value to salt, the dopamine circuits keep doing what they do, and somewhere in the middle of all that ancient biological machinery running on modern inputs, you eat something salty, and something in you just settles. 400 million years of biology landing in a single moment of relief. That's not nothing.